ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवा साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वञ्चाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिते नामने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरद्विषे नमः। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। So today we're starting from verse number 62. 62 and 63 we will chant together and then we will discuss. ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः सङ्गस्तेषुपजायते सङ्गात् सञ्जायते कामः कामात् क्रोधोऽभिजायते। ध्यायतः while contemplating vishayan sense objects, pumsaha of a person, sangaha attachment, teshu in the sense objects, upajayate develops, sangat from attachment, sanjayate develops, kamaha desire, kamat from desire, krodhaha anger, abhijayate becomes manifest. Translation: while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them And from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. In verse number 63, क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः, सम्मोहः स्मृतिविभ्रमः, स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो, बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. क्रोधात्, from anger, bhavati, takes place, sammohaha, perfect illusion, sammohat, from illusion, smriti, from of memory, vibhramaha, bewilderment, smriti bhramshat, after bewilderment of memory, buddhinashaha, loss of intelligence, buddhinashat, and from loss of intelligence, pranashyati, one falls down. Translation: from anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. Okay. So, we see here how we are always in the process of attaching to the objects of the senses and finally falling down to this material world and trapped in the bondage. So this is a process, a step-by-step process, and a cyclic process also. So it starts from dhyayato, that is, when we contemplate or think of the sense objects, we get attached to this. So contemplation on the objects of the senses leads to attachment to the objects of the senses. And from that attachment, we desire is developed. And if that desire is not fulfilled, then anger is developed. This is the fourth step. So contemplation on the objects of the senses first. Second is development of attachment. 2. Number 3 is development of desire. And number 4 is development of anger. Then what happens? When anger is developed, we get deluded. Complete illusion takes place. So this is the 5th stage. And from that illusion, there is a bewilderment of memory. We completely lose our memory of our true nature. And then what happens? There is complete loss of intelligence. Our buddhi does not work properly then. And the final result is pranashyati, that is falling down again to this material world, material bondage. So first is contemplation on the sense objects. Second is attachment. Third is desire. Fourth is anger. And 5th is delusion. 6th is bewilderment of memory. 7 is loss of intelligence. And 8 is complete fall down in the clutches of Maya, that is in the material bondage. So we see this sangha, that is attachment or attraction, is very important. This is the most dangerous stage. We can see this is the seat of this material world, and it is a very serious disease also. for all of us. And we see Bhagavan, we discussed earlier also, Bhagavan is named as Bhavaroga Vaidya. That is the doctor who can cure us from the disease of material attachment. So this material attachment can be easily taken care of by the Lord. How? That when we take shelter with the Lord and when we engage all our sense organs in His service, then the process is done automatically. And Bhavaroga Vaidya, and another very beautiful adjective is given in Mukundamala Stotra by King Kṛṣṇakāntā as Bhavaluntana Kovida. Bhavaluntana Kovida means who is expert at plundering the painful position of repeated birth and death of the jivas. He is Bhavaluntana Kovida. So Bhavaroga Vaidya and Bhavaluntana Kovida, both is the addresses for the Lord. So He can save us from this attachment. And as we discussed in our previous class, when we were discussing about the highest stage of Sthita Prajna, that is Matparaha, in the last verse, what Bhagavan was saying. And we saw how Ambarisha Maharaja was a Matparaha Bhakta, that is, who was able to engage all his senses in the service of the Lord. So this is the strategy that we can also follow if we dedicate all our organs in the devotional service of the Lord, like King Kṛṣṇakāntā or like Ambarisha Maharaja. We can also get rid of this attachment, which is the seed of the material bondage and this material world. Because we see that Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva also are subjected to the influence of sense objects. We see in Brahma Vimohana Leela how Lord Brahma was deluded and he tried to test the supremacy of the Lord when he was in Vrindavana. And we see in Samudra Manthana Leela also, the churning of the Milky Ocean. So in that Leela also we see that Lord Shiva saved the entire creation by drinking the poison that came from the churning of the Milky Ocean. And after that also, such an exalted personality Lord Shiva is, he was also deluded by the charm of Mohini Murti. So we see how we all are under the influence of Maya, that is Lord's energy. And so it is only possible if we can take complete shelter, and then only, as we discussed previous day also, in the last class only, that how all the 6 impurities of heart can be removed. That is Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. How can all this be vanquished by the influence of the Lord? So we see, we have seen many examples, many incidents in the history where we see that many exalted personalities also became victim of Kama, that is lust. But on the other hand, we see Haridasa Thakura, the great devotee, who would chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra 24 hours continuously, years after years. How he could pass the taste of Maya. And we see Ambarisha Maharaja. So they could make it possible on the strength of the unalloyed devotion to the Supreme Lord. That is Avyathicarane Bhakti, as we will be discussing in the later chapters. So this is the position. Now see, how this step by step fall down happens. As we discussed about this attachment, this is the seed of the material world. We see that attachment, as we see, the first step is Vishaya. Attachment arises by contemplating on the Vishaya, that is the objects of the senses. Now, our main problem is the thought that objects of the senses or objects of the sense enjoyment can give us happiness. This is not truth. Actually, there is a saying that Vishannati avavatnanti yete vishayan, which means that which makes us depressed, Vishannati, or bounds is Vishaya. So, Vishaya, that is objects of the senses, is not a very good thing. We should always try to get rid of the Vishaya. So, Rupa Goswami, as we see, he says that by developing Krishna consciousness, that is, if we are in the divine consciousness, one understands that everything has its use in relation to the Lord, that is, in the service of the Lord. In this creation, there is nothing insignificant which cannot be used in the service of the Lord. Everything has its use in the service of the Lord. So, this is the complete knowledge, and who has this complete knowledge, he will not artificially try to avoid material objects. Artificially avoiding material objects is not at all a scientific process. Rather, if we can use all the objects in the service of the Lord, then it makes sense. So, we may try to avoid good food, but then the images of our previous experience may remain in our mind, and anytime it can come to the forefront and can make the cause of our downfall. So we see, on the other hand, if we offer the good food to the Lord with full knowledge that He is the only enjoyer, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. So Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam. So He is the enjoyer of all the sacrifices and all the austerities and penances. So if it is the case, then with the full knowledge, we can offer the good food to the Lord and have the remnant, that is the prasadam. So in this way, the prasadam will no longer be mere material food, it will be spiritualized. It will be spiritualized. So it is a higher test, as we were discussing. Higher test leads to higher consciousness. So it is a very easy and blissful process also, that we all can try. And it is like entering the kingdom of the Lord from the kingdom of matter. And it is indeed a transcendental experience that we all can have. Okay, so this is verse number 62, 63, and now 64 and 65 we will chant together. रागद्वेष विमुक्तैस्तु विषयानिन्द्रियैश्चरन् आत्मवश्यैर्विधेयात्मा prasadam adhigacchati. Raga, attachment, dvesha and detachment, vimuktaihi, by one who has become free from, two, but vishayan, sense objects, indriyaihi, by the senses, charan, acting upon, atmavashaihi, under one's control, Vidheya Atma, one who follows regulated freedom. Prasadam, the mercy of the Lord. Adhigacchati, attains. Translation. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य न चायुक्तस्य भावना न चाभावयतः शान्तिरशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम्. Na asti, there cannot be, buddhihi, transcendental intelligence, ayuktasya, of one who is not connected with Krishna consciousness, na, not, cha, and ayuktasya, of one devoid of Krishna consciousness, bhavana, fixed mind in happiness, na, not, cha, and abhavayataha, of one who is not fixed, shantihi, peace, ashantasya, of the unpeaceful, utaha, where is, sukham, happiness. Translation. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So raga dvesha vimuktestu vishayan indriyaishchara. Raga and dvesha. Raga is attachment to the objects with a deluded thought that this object will bring pleasure to me. And on the other hand, dvesha, with a thought that this object has given me pain or may cause pain to me. So everything is related to this me. It can give me pleasure, it can give me pain. So we develop a kind of attachment and aversion to any object, Vishaya. So it is said that Sukhanushayi Ragam, Dukhanushayi Dvesham. And we see sometimes we mistakenly think that Dvesha is a kind of dispassion, Vairagya, which is truly not. Because, why not? Because we may sometimes develop a kind of aversion to an object and may think that we have become dispassionate to this. It is a very common mistake that we do. But we must have to understand that we can develop a kind of aversion only there is a tremendous attachment to this material world. If we are not attached to this material world, there is no question of attachment or aversion. So the root of this is attachment only to this material world. That is why we get attached or feel attachment, that is raga, the exact word is raga, and dvesha for certain objects. But the fact is, if we leave this present body with attachment or aversion for any person or any object, that will be the cause of our rebirth. As we see in the life of Bharata Maharaja, how he developed attachment for this deer, and in the next life he took his birth in the deer body. And I have heard another story also, where a person who was a very pious and austere person begot a son who is of a very bad character, and who was torturing like anything to his parents. And when this person, this pious father, asked this to his Gurudeva, that is, Gurudeva, as far as I can remember, I have not done any impious act in my life. So how it is possible that he is my son, such an impious and no way he can be my son. So that was his question. And then this Gurudeva said, yes, definitely you haven't done anything in this life, but in your previous life, you have done a very grave offense to this person. And to take the revenge, he has come as your son. So we see how attachment and aversion can cause rebirth and can make our next life miserable. So this is the thing. And then is Vidheyatma. This word is very important. Vidheyatma means whose mind is fully controlled for him. And therefore the threefold miseries of this material world no longer exist, as we discussed when we were studying verse 56. That is, a threefold miseries like Adi, Adhyatmika, Adi Bhautika, and Adi Daivika. They are all vanquished for Vidheya, such a person. And we see that why is it? Because for him, the mind becomes unbiased and gets perfectly purified. So no attachment or aversion can remain in the mind of a person who is a Vidheyatma, which means that mind is absolutely controlled. Absolutely controlled. So it means that he is acting in divine consciousness, and thus obtains pure bliss on the mercy of the Lord. Prasadam adhigacchati. So he attains perfect peace or bliss by the mercy of the Lord. So we see that acting in divine consciousness for the satisfaction of the Lord, though apparently seems to be on the sensual plane, that is having nice prasadam, food, etc. But actually he is transcendently situated to all attachment and aversion, material attachment and aversion. His only attachment is to the lotus feet of the Lord. So he is a Vidheyatma. Okay, so with this we should conclude today. Still a few verses will remain to discuss for chapter 2 that we will be discussing in our next class. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare